Welcome to Biblical Insight. Today I need to share something that's been pressing on my heart. This isn't just another teaching. This is about those moments when you're so broken, so convinced you're failing everyone you love, that disappearing seems like mercy. We're going to walk through a story together, the story of a man named Elias. And through his journey, I believe we'll discover truths that might crack open something you've been holding too tight. So grab a quiet spot, lean in, and let's talk honestly about worth, sacrifice, and what it really means to choose life when everything in you wants to quit. Life can crush you, can't it? You've had those moments where everything feels like it's collapsing. Your job, your family, your dreams. You start wondering if you're the problem, if maybe everyone would be better off without you. That's exactly where Elias was. His story is about a father who hit rock bottom, prayed for God to remove him, and then faced a choice that would define everything. It's a story for all of us, because we've all faced moments where giving up feels easier than pushing through. Let me tell you about Elias. Regular guy, husband, father, accountant, trying to keep his family afloat in an economy that kept kicking him down. Money was tight, his wife Sarah was frustrated, and his 12-year-old son David deserved a future Elias wasn't sure he could provide. One night, after a brutal fight with Sarah, Elias sat alone in his car and prayed a desperate prayer. God, if my family would be happier without me, take me away. He thought his absence might be the best gift he could give them. The next morning, driving to work, he got into an accident, fatal. And in that moment between life and death, God showed him two possible futures and forced him to choose. Now, let me show you what happens when despair becomes a prayer for death and how God responds. You felt it, haven't you? That crushing weight when life feels too heavy to bear. Elias was there, sitting in his car, feeling like a complete failure. He looked at his life, the missed opportunities, the mounting bills, his wife's disappointment, and thought, maybe they'd be better off without me. That's despair talking, and it's spiritually dangerous. Job knew this feeling. Job 3:11 cries out, "Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb?" Like Elias, Job was so overwhelmed that death seemed like relief. But here's what's beautiful. Even in those dark moments, you're not alone. Psalm 34:19 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." When Elias prayed that desperate prayer in his car, God didn't abandon him. He was right there, holding space for transformation. Listen, those moments when you feel like you're drowning, God's closer than you think. But here's what makes Elias's despair so dangerous. It wasn't just sadness. It was what I call inverted pride. He'd elevated his own negative self-assessment above everything else. When you say, "I'm so worthless they'd be better off without me," you're not being humble. You're playing God. You're assuming you have the final word on your value, rejecting God's sovereignty over your life. Elias was trapped in comparison. His wife kept mentioning others. Thomas, who started a business, Mark working abroad, Pierre, who emigrated to Canada. Meanwhile, they were stuck. Every comparison was poison, forcing him to measure his worth on purely external metrics. And comparison is a game you cannot win. Be honest with yourself. Have you ever felt like Elias? Have you let your mistakes define you? Decided your presence is a burden? That's the enemy's voice, trying to pull you away from your purpose. Elias almost fell for it, but what happened next changed everything. Let me show you what Elias discovered about the real cost of his prayer. After the crash, Elias found himself standing beside the wreckage, looking at his own motionless body. "I'm dead," he realized with chilling clarity. Two beings appeared, one radiating peace, the other alluring but unsettling. They confirmed his worst fear and his deepest wish. You've left the world of the living because you asked for it. Your prayer was heard. Elias panicked. But my family, what happens to them? And they showed him. In the first vision, his funeral unfolds. Sarah stands stoic. David weeps. Then the life insurance payout arrives, a policy Elias had nearly forgotten. The money pays off debts, funds Sarah's sewing business. Her talents flourish. David, driven by his father's memory, excels in school, graduates from a prestigious engineering program. Years later, Sarah is happy with a new partner. David has a successful career, a beautiful family. On his wall hangs Elias's photo, honored but absent. Your sacrifice opened doors that your presence kept closed, the being whispers. The pain of seeing this was worse than physical death. His life, measured in dollars and cents, was worth more as an insurance payout than as ongoing presence. They thrived because he was gone. It confirmed his deepest fear, that his assessment of his negative worth was correct. But the second being wasn't finished. Want to see what happens if you survive? The vision shifted brutally. Elias lies in a hospital bed, eyes open, mind intact, but completely paralyzed. Tetraplegia. His body is a prison. Sarah quits everything to care for him, feeding, washing, turning him constantly. Medical bills pile into an insurmountable mountain. David abandons college dreams, takes a low-wage job to help. His future evaporates. Elias watches it all, unable to move, unable to speak. He hears Sarah crying alone at night. He sees David explode. Why? Why is this happening to us? The vision freezes on complete desolation. So here's the impossible choice: their happiness without him, or their suffering with him. What would you do? Would you step away, thinking it's best, or fight to stay, even if it meant pain for everyone? This is where everything we think we know about love gets turned inside out. Think about John 15:13. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. Elias thought that meant dying, removing himself so the insurance money could save them. But the visions flipped that script completely. His physical death wasn't noble sacrifice. It was escape from shame. The true sacrifice, the harder path, was choosing to live for them, despite becoming the perceived source of their suffering. Romans 12:1 speaks of offering our bodies as living sacrifices, not dead ones. Living, active, present. That's what Elias finally understood. Real sacrifice isn't absence. It's staying in the fire, offering your broken self completely, choosing presence over escape. Standing between those two futures, Elias looked back at his entire life, not as failures, but as lived moments. The laughter, the tears, the arguments, the reconciliations, the small daily graces that actually make up a family. He'd been so trapped in comparison that he'd missed the essential value of simply being present. I was blind, he said. I prayed to disappear because I felt unworthy. But who am I to decide my family would be better off without me? The radiant being responded. The real question isn't whether they'd be happier with or without you. The real question is, are you ready to fight to improve your life, to become the man you want to be, instead of fleeing into death or self-pity? Have you ever had to make a choice like that? Maybe not as dramatic, but a moment where you had to decide to keep going for the sake of someone else? That's the kind of sacrifice that builds a legacy. Now let me show you why this choice matters more than you think. Elias's story hinges on a single truth. Life is worth living, even when it hurts. He was literally living out Deuteronomy 30:19. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. God was saying to Elias, choose life, not because it's easy, but because it's where transformation happens. Elias could have chosen death, believing it was noble, but that would have cut short God's plan. Psalm 139:16 tells us God had already ordained all his days, including this trial. Choosing life meant trusting that God could work through the pain, not around it. You've faced moments like this, haven't you? Maybe not literal life or death, but times when you had to decide whether to keep fighting or give up. A job that felt like a dead end, a relationship breaking your heart, a dream out of reach. Choosing life means saying, I'm not done yet. God's not done with me yet. With newfound clarity, Elias made his decision. I choose not to take the easy way out. Yes, disabled. Yes, with all the difficulties. But I want to show my family that even in the worst adversity, love can transform the impossible. The radiant being confirmed what he discovered. Happiness isn't the absence of difficulties. It's the ability to face them together. That's the core truth. Real happiness is forged in shared resilience, in vulnerability, not in isolated success or escaping hardship. Elias's decision to return wasn't just about staying alive. It was about becoming a testimony. His paralysis became the stage where God's strength showed up. 2 Corinthians 4:8-10 captures this. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, struck down, but not destroyed. Elias's broken body became a canvas for God's glory, showing his family that love and faith can shine through even the darkest moments. Suffering doesn't just break us, it shapes us. James 1-4 says trials produce perseverance. Elias's return wasn't the end of struggle. It was the start of a new kind of faith, one built on perseverance, not perfection. Think about your own life. What's the hardest thing you're facing right now? Health struggle, financial burden, broken relationship? It's tempting to think suffering means you failed, but Elias's story says otherwise. Your pain is a place where God can work, where your faith can grow, where your love can shine. And here's the beautiful mystery. 2 Corinthians 12:9 says, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Elias's physical breakdown wasn't the end of his value. It was the exact condition required for God's grace to become his sufficiency. His total dependence forced him to rely utterly on God and his family's love. Weakness became the channel for grace. His brokenness opened doors his strength never could. When Elias returned to consciousness in that hospital bed, unable to move, he heard distant voices. Then Sarah's warm hand grasped his. David's smaller hand joined. Their faces leaned over him. Worry, yes, but overwhelming love. And paralyzed in that bed, unable to do anything he once defined as valuable, Elias felt more alive than he had in years, because he finally understood. Happiness isn't a destination. It's a way of traveling. It's the ongoing act of choosing faith, choosing presence, choosing love right in the middle of impossible circumstances. Psalm 73:26 puts it perfectly. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Even when Elias's body failed, God was his rock. That's true for you too. Your mistakes, your struggles, your broken places, they don't define you. What defines you is your choice to keep showing up. Be honest with yourself. Where are you letting despair define you? Maybe you're stuck comparing yourself to others, thinking you're not enough. Here's the truth. You are enough, not because of what you do, but because of who God made you to be. So how do we actually live this out? Let me give you practical steps. Here's what Elias's story teaches us to do right now. First, recognize the moments you're tempted to give up. When life feels too heavy, pause, pray. Remind yourself of Deuteronomy 30:19. Choose life. That doesn't mean choosing ease. It means choosing purpose. Second, reject inverted pride. When you catch yourself thinking, everyone would be better off without me, stop. That's not humility. That's you playing God. Your value isn't determined by your performance. It's determined by God's purpose for you. Third, embrace living sacrifice. Take one practical step today. Write down one thing you're grateful for. Maybe it's your family, your health, or just the fact that you're still here, fighting. Then take one small step forward. A kind word to someone struggling, a brave choice you've been avoiding, a moment of trust when fear wants to control you. Fourth, stop comparing. When you measure yourself against others' success, you're using the wrong yardstick. Your journey is yours. God's plan for you isn't the same as His plan for Thomas or Mark or Pierre. Focus on being faithful where you are. Fifth, find your people. Don't do this alone. Find a friend, a mentor, a community who reminds you of God's truth when you forget. Share your struggles, your hopes, your choices. That's how you grow, how you become a testimony like Elias did. And remember this, your weakness isn't your end. It might just be where God's power shows up strongest. Every limitation can become a channel for grace if you'll offer it to Him. Thank you for spending this time with me on Biblical Insight. Remember, beware of inverted pride and self-condemnation. Understand that true sacrifice is often a living sacrifice, staying present in difficulty rather than escaping. And always answer God's call to choose life, even when it's hard, because shared struggle builds true resilience and reveals God's power in your weakness. What we've shared today isn't theory. It's something you can live out, starting right now. Where are you tempted to check out because you feel you're not enough? Where have you decided absence would be mercy? I'm asking you to reconsider. Your presence has value, not because of what you achieve, but because of who you are and whose you are. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Stay tuned for our next talk. Keep believing, keep growing, and keep pressing forward. Your weakness isn't your end. It might just be where God's power shows up strongest.